This is how far gone we are. We are so desperate for this oil. We are so desperate for this resource that we will dig up the land beneath us.
The whole environment, from horizon to horizon, as far as you can see, has been destroyed by tar sands developments.
Because the oil's there, do we use it to the last drop?
Tar sands consist of oil trapped in a mixture of sand, water and clay.
The extraction and production of oil from tar sands emits about 3 times as much carbon dioxide as that of conventional oil.
Current tar sands production is about 1.3 million barrels of oil per day. Licenses have been granted to increase production to 7 million barrels per day.
Shell, ExxonMobil, ConocoPhillips, Total and BP all have plans for expansions or developments in Canada's tar sands.
To understand the effects of the tar sands development on the environment and local people, we arranged Skype sessions with Mae'r layman, who has first-hand experience of the truth about the tar sands.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, I'm Haney and we're Ysgol Bro Ddyfi.
And I'm Rebecca. We're here today to ask questions.
Can you tell us who the Beaver Lake Cree Nation are and how large it is?
Well, we're Plains Cree at Beaver Lake. We have about maybe 600, 700 members at most, but on reserve there's maybe about under 400 people. We're really small.
But strong.
The Beaver Lake Cree are increasingly being surrounded, you know. They have large traditional territories that they used to hunt and fish and gather plants and medicines across, and a lot of those lands are now being destroyed by tar sands developments.
The consultation process, as they like to call it, is basically throwing money at poor communities, saying, hey, you know, we're going to help you out if you help us out. You know, you just say that it's okay that we can, you know, come in here and take all these resources.
The Beaver Lake Cree Nation is an indigenous community of about 900 people on the edge of Canada's boreal forest. They're currently fighting a legal battle to stop further tar sands development within their ancestral lands,
Taking on the governments of Alberta and Canada and the world's largest oil companies.
So what's it got to do with us?
Over the past few decades, Western society has consumed like never before.
50 years ago, few people had a television.
Now we have one in most rooms.
This isn't helped by a government who encourages us, boosting economic growth by increasing consumption.
An economy that's always growing needs us to keep using more.
We all watch new iPods, mobile phones, dishwashers and DVD players.
When you can have more.
Why would anyone want less? Most people associate oil with fueling a car or plane, but oil is in so many things.
The nylon and polyester clothes you put on in the morning.
The packaging that comes with your TV.
Your television. Ink.
Crayons.
Heart valves.
Bubblegum.
Deodorant.
CDs.
Washing up liquid.
And washing powder. Aeroplanes and cars use oil to fuel them, but how much oil is used to build them?
You know that sweet taste in toothpaste?
That comes from an oil-based chemical called glycerine.
Even your toothbrush is made from oil.
We're not just dependent.
We're addicted.
We're rapidly using up the world's supplies of something that takes millions of years to form.
This was first pointed out by Dr. M. King Hubbard in 1956. He showed how production starts at zero and rises to a peak.
Once the peak passes, production declines until the resource is gone.
He predicted that world oil production would peak in 1995 and that alternative forms of energy must replace petroleum.
Everyone ridiculed him.
He also said that US oil production would peak in about 1970.
It did.
The tar sands have always been in the ground there, and they've been exploited at a very low level since the 1970s. But it's only in the last few years that they've really started to ramp up, you know, the destruction of the environment to exploit the tar sands.
Your uncle said that the tar sands does not just threaten our Cree way of life, it threatens all of our lives. We feel we are looking at the end of things. What does he mean by that?
When he says we're looking at the end, you know, it's sort of like, wow, is this it? Are we not going to learn from this? Are we not learning from what we're doing? Are we just going to keep on digging and digging, you know, until there's absolutely nothing left? Because that's what he sees. I think he sees the desperate efforts of frightened humanity, because this system, this economy, you know, that's why they're doing it.
We found out from members of the Beaver Lake Cree youth how they feel about the tar sands.
I'm Shahani Potts and I'm from Beaver Lake, Alberta, Cree Nation, and I'm going to talk to you today about how people working for the government and oil sands, it's affecting how we live, and people don't do anything about it. It's killing off animals and hurting other people. And for example, like in Red Deer, there's a big oil company that works there, and then when they pump out their oil, it takes plenty of water, and then they just put their excess stuff into a tailored pond, and that's killing animals and plenty of birds, and nobody's doing anything about it. So today's time to step up.
I remember my father would tell me stories, you know, how when they were young and they would be walking from the reserve to the nearby town, there would be like streams or creeks along the way, and you could just stop and drink from the water on the side of the road, and it was clean, it was free running. And nowadays you can't do something like that. You know, it's really affected the water.
Every one of us is 70% water. Each of us in the UK uses 150 litres of water a day. Each of us in the UK uses 4.42 litres of oil a day. Every litre of tar sands oil takes 4.5 litres of water to produce. The Canadian tar sands produces 206,683,483 litres of oil a day. The people of the Beaver Lake Cree no longer drink from the river due to pollution from the tar sands.
There's this expression that's used a lot when it comes to describing First Nations communities in Canada and North America in general, and it's the crabs in a bucket. You know, the one crab tries to climb out and all the other crabs pull it down to the bottom. Now, this expression has been used for so long, and it's been thrown around by the youth even. You know, every time one of the youth tries to, you know, do something and accomplish something, everyone seems to drag him down or her down. But do a little experiment, you know, get a bunch of crabs, put them in a bucket, and you know what, sure enough, you'll see one crab's going to try to climb up and the other ones will start latching onto him, but they're not trying to pull him down. At first it looks like that because they get pulled down for a long time, but what they're trying to do, they're trying to build up to the top and tip it over. They're trying to tip it over so they can all get out.
Dear Mum and Dad, I'm here in the Alberta boreal forest. I've seen caribou, moose and deer. No wolves or bears yet. Very beautiful. Did you know it's one of the lungs of the world? So much carbon dioxide stored here. Beautiful and important. My kind of place. Back in a few weeks. Love, Michael.
The pristine boreal forest in Canada is absolutely beautiful. I was lucky enough to see bear, deer, beavers, chipmunks, groundhogs, you know, and it was a real privilege to be walking through this beautiful, beautiful countryside and seeing these wild animals. And yet you'd go few miles further down the road to where the tar sands developments are, and there's none of that life there. It's all been scared off, or it can't find enough to eat, or it can't migrate as it used to because pipelines are all over the place. And it's very sad to think about the remaining areas of pristine forest that I was wandering through and seeing all these animals could be destroyed in a few years' time.
Every year I look at Google Maps and I look at around my reserve, because they usually update the photos, and you can see these huge parts of forest that just are gone. And it's interesting how it all kind of outlines the reserve. Like, that's their refuge. That's where the wildlife goes. Like, there's so many birds, and but our reserve is so small that we can't accommodate everything.
The elders talk about how people are increasingly getting sick. There's like sooty particles being found on the trees and the plants, and things aren't growing as well, and a lot of the animals that the hunting have found to be sick. So really it's affecting them a great deal, and they're very worried that it's going to affect their entire culture, and their entire traditional way of life is really under threat.
And it's really affected our way of life in terms of hunting, our diet. Generation after generation surviving off of wild game like moose, deer, caribou, buffalo even. They're few and far between now.
Dear Mum and Dad, heard something today. They're blowing up the forest with explosives, making long lines, seismic lines, 10 metre wide through trees. Wolves run the lines. Caribou and other animals are scared to cross them. No life, no animals. Forest is gone for a long distance. Moving on. Love, Michael.
We started at 6 this morning from Machynlleth. It's now 11 and we're here at the Barbican, London.
It's excellent. Yeah, it's going to be like seriously, can you help me?
We're here because there's a live satellite link from The Hague where the Shell AGM is being held. Shareholders have been asked to vote on Resolution 23, which asks for a review of the tar sands operation. We hope to talk to some of the people involved.
I'm outside the Shell AGM at the Barbican Centre in London with Alexandra Woodsworth, who represents Fair Pensions.
What the resolution calls for is for greater transparency from BP and from Shell, and for greater disclosures about how they are managing these risks associated with tar sands. What we hope to do is to get people thinking about where their money is invested, to let people know that they have both a right and a responsibility to question how money is invested on their behalf via their pension fund. This resolution focuses on issues around the business case. So what will happen if oil prices change in the future? What will happen if government regulation changes in the future? How can the companies guarantee that oil demand will stay high enough, that oil prices will stay high enough to guarantee profitability to shareholders over the long term? So these environmental issues and social issues also offer financial risk, and that's what these resolutions are about. And I think that's something that we've seen very clearly with the Gulf of Mexico spill, when BP shareholders watched 30 billion get wiped off their share price in only a week. This proved that environmental risks are also financial ones that shareholders need to be concerned about.
We're here in London at the Shell AGM, just outside the Barbican Centre where it's being held. And we're speaking to Canon Christopher Hall, who's just popped out of the meeting to give us an update.
We're just taking questions at present, and there have been some very long-winded questions, but largely about the various projects that Shell is involved in around the world, in Alaska, in Nigeria, and in the Mexican Gulf. So that's where we've reached so far. We haven't yet reached the tar sands resolution, but I did ask a question because a few days ago in the Daily Telegraph there was an article in which a Shell executive said that we need fuel, and so we're going to get the last drop out of Mother Earth. So I asked whether that was the Shell board's policy, Royal Dutch Shell, because if we do that, if we get all the oil there is out of Mother Earth, The result of that is going to be a 6-degree centigrade increase in the global average temperature, which not in my lifetime, but perhaps in yours, could mean that much of Holland, Dutch mainland, would be flooded, as well as parts of London, which could include Shell Centre.
The Guardian's carbon calculator has revealed that 57% of our carbon emissions come from manufacturing and consumption.
Things that are made for us to use.
However much we insulate our homes,
Cut our energy use.
Travel by bus, not car.
Or have holidays nearer to home.
Unless we reduce our stuff.
We're asking for trouble.
Big trouble.
And we don't want that.
To stabilise our climate, we must keep global temperature rise to 2 degrees above historical levels.
As Lloyd's white paper on energy security states.
This requires a step change in the way energy is produced, transported and used.
With a 2-degree temperature rise, the UK will still have heat waves and floods.
We'll still lose coastal villages.
At 2 degrees, Tuvalu and the Maldives will disappear underwater.
Polar bears and coral reefs will be gone.
But it's better than going above 2 degrees.
Nature magazine published an article saying that to prevent a global temperature rise of more than 2 degrees, we should only use 60% of known conventional reserves.
That means leaving 40% of conventional oil and all unconventional oils like the tar sands in the ground.
Looks like Dr. Hubbard was right again.
We would only need to exploit the current reserves of tar sands alone to take us right to the brink of runaway climate change.
Calling tar sands oil is like calling ketchup a tomato. Seriously, that's what it's the exact same thing. It's not oil. It's a dirty resource. It's very dirty, and the amount of work that it takes to get that 1 barrel of oil out of it, it's ridiculous.
It's not always easy to face the truth. But is it better to cover it up? Hiding something doesn't make it go away. It's still there. This problem we have is big. The longer we deny it, the worse the damage will be. It's time to see things as they really are. Before they're spoilt.
Have you been in the Shell meeting? I was just wondering whether you voted for or against Resolution 23.
I agree with it, but I was working there, so I couldn't vote. But I agree with the resolution.
Thank you very much. Why did you vote for Resolution 23?
Because I think that Shell should really be doing something about it. They could have made themselves look like the goodies if they had. Okay?
Thank you very much. Bye. You voted for or against Resolution 23?
I'm sorry, I work for Shell, so I was there to sort of be part of the staff of the thing, so I didn't get a vote.
Okay, cool.
But if I had voted, I would have voted no.
Okay.
Can you tell us why?
This is the resolution about the oil sands, yeah?
That's right.
Because I think we're doing a good job of trying to manage the environmental problems that there are around oil sands mining. So I think that some of the things that people are saying about... sorry, you need the mic in front of me. Some of the things that people are saying about oil sands and about the amount of CO2 that our operations produce and the effect we're having on the environment are not accurate.
Hi, we're on the train back from London and we just got a text message from Colin from the cooperative saying that 11% of the shareholders from Shell voted against Shell.
And they voted either for Resolution 23 or abstained, and that means that, although it's a bit disappointing, it means that 1 in 10 agreeing with us, and Shell can't ignore that, and it's just good because it's a result finally after a tiring day, and now we're going home.
Yay.
How does it feel to know that the Beaver Lake Cree are imprisoned by Shell and other oil companies and shareholders?
it's disgusting. Sort of the situation that we're in is, you know, this is it. This is the only work that's available for a lot of people. Uh-oh. My son is home. I just think about this little guy. I don't want him to have to think that this is, you know, all I can do is work up in the tar sands.
Well, my name's Chance McPherson. My mom is from Beaver Lake and my dad is from the Heart Lake Nation up and around there. I'm going into grade 12, and my father is heavily connected with the tar sands, which is why it's difficult for me to pick a side. And I can see why people are against anti-tar sands, because there's so many people in Alberta that depend on it, like my family, for example. And my father, he doesn't have a grade 12 education, he doesn't have a diploma, so he's kind of boxed in. Whereas he pushed me to get an education so I could have decisions. And that's what I'm doing. And I have so many people that I know of, especially family, that have dropped out, especially in grade 10. They have a grade 10 education, and I asked them, well, why'd you do that? And they said, well, I can just go work up in the tar sands, or in the oil sands up in McMurray. And I said, well, what are you going to do when that runs out? They said, well, we're going to move to Saskatchewan because they're going to be starting down there. And I said, well, the world isn't always going to depend on us for oil. It's going to happen sooner or later. And I just hope that Canada can adapt to it.
Dear Mum and Dad, found out what they're doing. There's oil under the forest, black bitumen mixed with the earth the oil companies want. Huge diggers scrape forest and land away, loading tar sands onto even bigger trucks. Stench of industry and death made me sick. Might come home soon. Love, Michael.
We took a flyover of the tar sands, and there were these little yellow dots scurrying around on the surface like ants. And it turns out they are the largest dumper trucks in the world, 3 stories high, much bigger than my house. You know, they are shocking. The tyres alone are twice our height, to give it some sort of perspective. And yet they look insignificant when they're placed in the tar sands.
What is it like breathing in the fumes of the tar sands?
You breathe it in, you feel it in your lungs. You feel like your lungs have just been coated with something. It's like smoking an entire pack of cigarettes in one sitting. That's what it feels like to have that air in your lungs.
The smell was unbelievable. It made you gag, even 3,000 feet up in the air. Now, whether that's the exposed oily tar sands, or whether it was the sulphur mountains, or whether it was the toxic tailings, the whole environment from horizon to horizon, as far as you can see, has been destroyed by tar sands developments. It was like something out of Lord of the Rings. It was like Mordor. You know, just black earth, smoking chimneys, and the smell of sulphur and toxins.
Dear Mum and Dad, the horror. Watched over 1,000 migrating ducks and geese land on what they thought was fresh water, but was toxic waste from tar sands. All dead. They only wanted a rest and a drink. Water polluted, land poisoned. This is ecocide. I'm coming home. Love, Michael.
We heard about the ducks who landed on the tailings pond. Do you know anything about this?
Yes, there was an entire flock that had landed. They were in the middle of a migration, and they landed in the tailings pond in northern Alberta, and all of them died.
Why did the ducks die?
The toxicity of the tailings ponds. It's basically the wastewater that's used in the processing of the oil to get the oil out of the tar sands.
As a recent Greenpeace report says,
we need an energy revolution.
Then we don't have to commit ecocide.
Or face the chaos of peak oil.
We can have a secure energy future. And we don't have to destroy the Canadian boreal forest.
Indigenous people, like the Beaver Lake Cree, can keep their homelands.
London, legal counsel to the Beaver Lake Cree says, in law in Canada, the treaty rights of a First Nation must be protected and assured forever. So how can the oil companies do this to you?
Treaty 6 was signed in 1876, and since then there's been nothing more than violations of it. The root of the issue is the Canadian government and the Alberta government. It's their responsibility to monitor the actions of these corporations, to monitor the actions of these oil companies. And lately they look at the tar sands and all they can see is cash. That's all they can see. They're selling wholesale.
I just want to caution you in the future, and it's getting harder and harder to keep our identity, our Indianness. It's very hard for us to keep that. We want to be able to, in the future, say we are the indigenous people of this country. And that's the way you've got to keep that in mind. Don't ever forget that.
Hi, my name is Doug, and I'm from Beaver Lake. I just like my culture here, so I just want to keep it the same. Like as it is, no trees taken down, no oil. All the animals stay here, and I hope we stop this.
I think a lot of people don't understand that the treaty, what it means, and what they when they met for all this time praying, because they knew all this was going to happen. They knew it would come to this, and so they sat there and they prayed. What are we going to ask for? What are we going to do? Because we need to, you know, our people are going to die if we don't do something. We're going to lose our way of life. We're going to lose everything if we don't do something now. And they understood that. They were thinking about now. They were thinking, because they know this land is rich with resources. They know it's there, and they know that that's what they want. But they were scared. They were scared for us.
Let it be known that we, the Beaver Lake Cree Nation, are the keepers of the land shown on the map, which form a part of our traditional territory.
This land is our spiritual, physical and economic homeland. We keep these lands in honour of our ancestors and on behalf of our future generations.
So as long as the sun shines, the rivers flow and the grass grows, we can continue our traditional ways of life.
This is the land where we and our future generations will practice our sacred and spiritual ways and exercise our traditional right to hunt,
fish, trap and gather for food and support, which have been partly recognised by treaty and constitutional documents. It is our right to gain our livelihood from these lands.
Our responsibility to this land, our ancestors and our future generations cannot be surrendered or abandoned.
We have an obligation to ensure that the lands, waters and resources of our traditional territory are used sustainably and responsibly.
As such, we declare that no activities are to occur here that will destroy our lands, habitats and waters,
or their animals, fish, plants and medicines, such that we can no longer sustain ourselves through a traditional way of life.
We can't allow any activities that would make our traditional rights, which have been partly recognised by treaty and constitutional documents, meaningless.
We require deep consultation and accommodation when an activity has the potential to impact our rights.
We, the keepers of this land, will share it with those who respect our obligations and our traditional, constitutional and treaty rights.
We do this in honour of our ancestors and on behalf of future generations.
Can you tell us again about the crabs in the bucket?
One crab is trying to, climb out, and all the other ones take notice and they start pulling him down. And I'm like, oh look, he's being pulled down by all the other crabs, and I wanted to say, look, all the other Indians are pulling him down. Because that's that reserve mentality. You're stuck in that situation. You're stuck on the reserve. What I noticed is that after a while, they just ended up tipping it over. Because they built themselves high enough to do that. I was like, okay, maybe there is a way out of this bucket that we're in.
When you look closer, you always see more. There's always more than meets the eye. And everyone sees things differently. To one person, the whole world's a stage. To another, it's a maze. When I think of the story of the crabs in the bucket, I see the crabs as the human race, and the bucket as the mess we've got ourselves into. If we work together, we can tip the bucket over. We can get a better future for the next generation.